I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Winning in Outsourcing, Maximizing Procurement During the Sales Cycle to Enhance Revenue Opportunities. My name is Arlene Itori, and I'm a webinar coordinator for the Outsourcing Institute, and it is our pleasure to be the co-host of today's event with Hewlett-Packard. I'll be working in the background to help answer any technical or general questions that you may have. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly tell you about a few tools that you'll be able to use throughout today's session. First, we encourage you at any time during the presentation to submit your questions to today's speaker. To do this, click on the questions box, type your question in the space provided, and click on the Submit button. During today's presentation, we'll be asking poll questions to get to know you better and to help ensure that the content is relevant to your specific needs. When the poll appears, be sure to select the answer that best fits each question. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will be receiving a follow-up email in approximately 2 days, which will include a link with today's recorded webinar. The webinar recording will also be available at outsourcing.com. So without further ado, I will now turn it over to our moderator, Frank Counsel, founder and CEO of the Outsourcing Institute, for the formal introduction of today's speaker. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Arlene, and thank you for producing today's session. Very much looking forward to it. You know, fairly often in the outsourcing space, we find ourselves addressing topics that we've addressed before, and the challenge is also, you know, typically how to address it in a new way, whether it be offshoring or relationship management or RFP best practices. And those are topics that are, still are requested and still are hot topics. However, I'm especially always interested in new topics, and this certainly applies. When I was first approached several months back by Jill Sunshine on this, this concept of alignment between sales and procurement, I was very much intrigued and very much looking forward to getting her to share her insights with our audience, and she's kind enough to do that today. So Jill is a longtime member and supporter of OI with Hewlett-Packard, and is basically living the experience that she will be preaching today. In the interest of time, Jill, I'll pass it on to you, and I look forward to a very interactive discussion here today.
Thanks a lot, Frank. I really appreciate it, and I see also we had a commercial there for Outsourcing Institute, and I really appreciated the network you've provided and the doors that you open for those of us in the craft.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
So today's topics, first I wanted to tell you a little story about myself. How did I get into the outsourcing business? And I'm sure each of you have your own personal story about how you got in. But it was about a decade and a half ago, in the 1990s, I was working at Lucent Technologies in Columbus, Ohio, running the repair operations globally, which was both manufacturing and service. It was clear that Lucent was headed in a new direction. The plan was to outsource 80 to 90% of all manufacturing and repair, and I was running a shop that was about to be outsourced. So I took a bold risk, and I said to the VP of the factory, you know what, my team and I can be repurposed. Let's do the outsourcing deal. We will actually write the contract, we will negotiate the price, and then we will oversee that operation once done. And that's how I got into outsourcing, and since then, I've outsourced, offshored, and moved a lot of different types of services and products around the world, and really excited to get to talk to you today about some of the things I've learned and hear from you about some of the things you've learned. What do I do at HP? It is a somewhat different role that I play. I lead the Global Procurement Organization in the Americas, and on any given day, I can find myself becoming a buyer, a seller, or an advisor, so I can really identify with the roles that many of you play. And why do I say that? I've got a staff of people, and roughly 80 people located throughout the region, and our role is to sit between the HP sales team and third-party suppliers to help solution the third-party content. Not everything that HP sells is HP product or service. So when it is third-party, my team are engaged to make sure we get the right material, the right service at the right price and time. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about HP, only because I think it'll help you understand what I do, what my team does, and the special role we play. I'll talk about the value proposition of global procurement, because we are really more than your average procurement organization, and the role of our deal pursuit leads, which is like the conductor of an orchestra, and I'll elaborate more on that later. I've got some case studies in here to actually show you how we get engaged and how we help HP win and deliver new business. And then we'll have some time for Q&A, which Frank will facilitate at the end. On the next slide, this is a very quick broad brush of HP today, only so you see where I fit in and how I support the rest of the business. But we're really about the I in IT, the information, and we do provide services in 170 countries with more than 300,000 employees and a lot of sales and service partners. But what you see here is really, HP's tradition was in the hardware and the infrastructure space, is what you see in the orange boxes. You layer on top of that our commitment to software, which makes the hardware more effective and more efficient. And then in the blue is the services that we layer on top of our hardware and software, or in some cases third-party hardware and software. That's where I spend most of my time, in the services part of the business. Global procurement fits down below in the gray as a corporate function, spanning everything. Global supply chain is actually direct manufacturing and buying the piece parts to manufacture, but that's not where I lead and where I play a role at the moment. On the next slide, the HP services business, again, I'm flashing this up for you so it will make sense when you see the case studies, but this breaks down our service business into 4 major areas. Technology services, things like always-on support for our HP hardware and cloud consulting, which is big lately. And then the other 3 areas, BPO, infrastructure services outsourcing, and application services. That's probably where you know HP best, especially on the infrastructure side. But we are playing a heavy role in all 3 areas, BPO, ITO, and apps, and that's where my team and I spend the majority of our time. On the next slide, most of us in procurement, first thing we ask is, where does the company spend its money? And I wanted to show you where the company does spend its money. Again, this is our indirect and services spend. It does not include direct manufacturing. But if you look on the left side of the circle there, the donut, that shows you our internal stakeholders, or the business groups for whom we buy. In the blue, you'll see enterprise services, which is the ITO, BPO app side of the house. That's the largest chunk of what my team and I source, followed by global functions, 19%, so things like marketing, HR, and the like. And then technology services, another 10% in yellow. So if you take those services business I talked about on the previous slide, they account for 55% of the company's billions in spend on the indirect and non-production services spend. The spend by category, what do we buy? So we're actually buying quite a bit of hardware, software, and labor. So you can see contract labor is the biggest in the blue, 33%, followed by technology, 30%. So just those 2 categories of buying alone are 63% of what we buy. The takeaway that I want you to take with you here is that since there is such a heavy spend in support of HP's services business, we have a special effort that focuses on managing those relationships, making sure we really understand the end customer and the internal customers, enterprise services and technology services. And that's my reason for being and what I do all day. And given the synergies of the spend by categories, we also have another organization within global procurement, global categories, and that's really our factory that handles a lot of the master service agreements, the price quotes, and supports both the indirect and the services side of the house. On the next slide, this was a wow for me when I came to HP, which has been about 11 months ago, after being in the financial services industry and the telecom industry. This was a wow for me because a lot of procurement organizations have not crystallized their value prop as cleanly as what I saw here. And as I introduced myself to a lot of those senior leaders in the business, this was an incredible and powerful way of introducing our services. The headline here is that we're in business to be the world's leading procurement function to fuel HP's growth. That's our mission. That's what I'm out to do. And we play a key role in supporting the company, not just through cost savings, but in a number of ways. And where I've highlighted in yellow, that's where I spend 80 to 90% of my time, managing stakeholder relationships, contributing to operating margin through rate savings with those third-party suppliers, and enabling profitable revenue growth through what we call deal support and balance of trade. But deal support is where I'm going to focus a lot of my time throughout the rest of today's discussion. How do we deliver this value proposition? If I could have the next slide, please. I wanted to just flash up the way that we operate, and this was also somewhat new. For those of you that have followed HP and EDS for some time, you may know that we had a large merger a couple of years ago, and we took that opportunity in global procurement to really rethink what we do. We're in the outsourcing business. We should be taking advantage of shared services and low-cost delivery, and so we use what we sell. And by that I mean the sourcing centers, which is actually at the bottom of this slide. We've actually set up nearshore and offshore centers to do a lot of the transactional or the lower-end work in global procurement at a lower cost. And we have them in each region: Guadalajara, Mexico, here in this region, as well as Bucharest, Romania, and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So that's really a core and fundamental change in the operating model, using shared services, using a low-cost location. In the middle are the categories. That's what many people think of when they think of procurement, and that's sourcing, contracting, supply-based strategy, and the things without which you don't have a procurement organization. So really fundamental in driving the procurement organization. At the top is where I play the role and lead in the Americas region. I have a peer who does the same job in EMEA, and I have another peer in the Asia Pacific and Japan region. But America is on the larger side, and we tend to handle the global deals. So when a customer has 47 countries in which they want an outsourcing engagement, a lot of those deals would come through this region and myself and my organization. All three of these groups play a major role in supporting the sales teams. My team is most visible, but we're all leveraging the procurement expertise to help the sales teams win and deliver the business to the end customer. With that, let's drill down into the work of the regions. I'd like to just quickly flash this slide up. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but if you're curious what else we do in the region and what we don't do, these slides will be made available with the webinar recording, and you can reference this later. But one of the major areas that we're looking at are really trying to understand the end client. What do they want? What's the solution? And making sure that if that needs to be in the supply agreements, that we understand it well and we have back-to-back terms and flow downs with the third-party supply base. On the next page is what I call the deal pursuit life cycle. And I've coined a phrase internally that I call today's deals are tomorrow's spend. That's why we care so much about being involved when the sales team is bidding on the deal. We want the opportunity to influence which suppliers are used to leverage HP's size and scale, and to make sure we have the right revenue and operating margin to be successful to keep the customer satisfied for the duration of these deals. So from left to right on the red, that's where the conductor of the orchestra analogy really starts. So when a new deal comes up, a member of my organization is assigned to be the deal support lead. They then deeply understand the business strategy, what does the end customer want, and what will be HP product and service versus what will be handled by outside parties. Then as the conductor, my team will pull in other parts of global procurement. I showed you the category team, the shared services in the sourcing centers, and other parts of HP, and really lead across the organization. And any conductor will sometimes be very busy. All areas will be working very hard to respond to the customer RFP, but then sometimes there's a period where we might be waiting and just waiting on the customer to make a decision on shortlisting or final award. In the orange or the yellow box there, creating the solution, that's really iterative. And a lot of times when we engage, the customer is still, evaluating what they really want, and their requirements might change during the RFP cycle. So it's an iterative process. We continue to look for the best sources of supply during that iterative process and continue to sharpen our pencils as, many customers are really looking to HP to help them provide their services at a lower cost. Once we've won the deal, then we transition and plan for transformation, actually implement that. So that's the green and the blue bars there. So as we're sitting on the sales team looking at the deal, we're planning ahead. We come up with a multi-year plan as to which suppliers we're going to change out, on what time frame. When is competitors' gear going to be changed out for HP gear, and how does that affect the supply base and the contracts that we inherit? So it's very much a shadowing of the sales team and mirroring their cycle as they hand off to delivery. So again, I think it's a very unique way of thinking about procurement, much more than your average procurement organization, really pulling in the right people at the right times and moving at the speed of the pursuit, which is often driven by the end customer and their RFP timeline. The early engagement is key to our success, and the end-to-end involvement of our team is another key to our success and how we add the most value to HP. So before we go into case studies, I want to pause here and have a polling question. So if we could get the polling question up. And the question is specifically, does your company have a procurement organization that is aligned to the sales team, similar to what we have here at HP? So your choices are just a basic yes or no. So while you're voting, Frank, any comments or highlights you'd want to draw out while we're waiting for the votes to come in?
Yes, the first question I'm wondering is, as I think about this, I'm wondering which organization struggled the most with this connection that you've apparently made, which is as much of a cultural connection as a business strategy. Did the sales organization struggle more making that connection, or was it more on the procurement and sourcing side?
Yeah, great question. My sense is that the procurement organization probably struggled a little bit more, to be honest. And part of this is about skill building. One of my challenges and my peers were skill building to make sure our teams understand what it's like to be the supplier, not the customer. Because when you're a typical procurement person, you're the customer. You get to set the timeline and tell the supplier what you want. But when you're participating with the sales team, you have to be a lot more flexible and adaptable and really understand deeply their business. So I think, we're making great headway and investing in our employees to make sure they understand the industries and the customers that HP supports, but it's a continued focus area and it'll remain so.
Okay, interesting.
Look at that. So in terms of the results, so we have 30% of you have a similar organization and 70% do not. So thank you for the polling there. But again, I do think it's something worth looking at. If your company is in business to sell things that have third-party content, it's a source of great strategic value and a fun place to work. I can definitely reiterate.
Jill, Frank, again, if I may, a related question to my previous one, but and this may seem like a trick question. It's not. Who do you recommend initiate the dialogue?
You mean sales versus procurement, or what? How do you mean? Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly. I mean, yeah, which group? I mean, because I mean, on this call specifically, you have executives and managers from both organizations. And it's unlikely that they're both going to walk out into the hall at the same time and just kind of converge on this thing. And any thoughts on what a first step would be and maybe where it should come from?
I think either one. I mean, to me, it's ideal if sales pulls global, procurement into the discussion. I think either way can work, but what's really important is to have a crisp value proposition. You know, this is exactly why it's important, why you should invest money in it. Here is how it supports the business. And you know, you really have to be viewed as an enabler. But we actually have strong support at the top, so the heads of the ES business and the technology services business are very close in their relationship with our C-level, you know, our head of global technology and business process, and they are people that I speak with, you know, so it's, you just have to be visible and get out there and have the conversation, but do it in a way that shows a clear and compelling business case. Everybody's interested in growing revenue right on the sales side and having a successful operating margin. And on the procurement side, a lot of procurement organizations are interested in more cost savings and showing that as a way of adding value, as well as showing revenue enablement as a next frontier service. So I think it benefits both parties. We want the same thing.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Great. So now I have a series of 4 case studies, and I won't go through everything on the slides. As I said, you'll be able to access the material after. But I wanted to give you some real-world examples in case you were wondering, you know, how does this work? How does the conductor of the orchestra and all the members of the orchestra really deliver on what I just told you? So this is a case study, an actual deal that HP won, on which my team was involved. And the headline is, it was an IT deal, IT outsourcing deal, in the financial services industry, and it was global, so it was pretty complex. It was also a lot of different functional service areas like network management, storage services, workplace services, and even some BPO document management services tacked on to that. The background was that we're really looking at a multi-billion-dollar agreement with hundreds of millions in third-party spend over 10 years. And it was a transformation and expansion of the global network for the customer and their IP telephony footprint. So the solution, as you can see there, they wanted it cheaper, you know, not uncommon. A lot of times the customer will come to us and say, we expect you to deliver at a lower cost. And they also wanted things like best shore, automation, and additional tools that we have. What role did global procurement play? And that's down the right-hand side. So we actually developed the third-party solution. You know, we looked over the contracts and provided costing and options for over 200 suppliers that were incumbent suppliers, you know, looking to change as many out as we could to HP sources of supply. You know, we did a due diligence and actually had a member of my team conduct due diligence and plan for a successful day one transition, a really part of outsourcing, right? It's making sure you don't have value leakage when the transition occurs. And so we had to make sure that we had aggressive go-live dates, which were met in more than 40 countries. Then we transitioned over 120 global master supply agreements and 35 sub-agreements into HP, onboarded 50 client agency contractors into our preferred supply base, and then negotiated third-party savings in the tens of millions for the life of the contract. So again, that just gives you a real-life example of how this role of procurement in the sales process plays out. I'm picking up a little background noise. Is the line still okay? It's okay? All right. So let's
Yep.
Great. In the next case study, it's another ITO deal, different industry on the next page, transportation industry in the Americas region, another cross-functional IT deal. This was a data center consolidation. It was about reducing costs, improving performance, and having a path to the cloud. Also a multi-million-dollar agreement with suppliers spend in the tens of millions over 5 years. And you can see the different piece parts of the global procurement role down the right-hand side. You know, getting engaged on the deal early, actually meeting with the client leadership to understand what was required and make sure we had a successful transition. Also wanted to highlight risk mitigation down below is an important element of the role that we play and the value that we can add to the sales process. On page 14, or 15, I guess it is 14, the next slide, we have a case study on applications, and this one is in the travel industry. It's actually a software application which we developed for the client, and it's a travel solution that's targeted at major airlines. It's an HP platform development that's being sold as a service. So in this case, the solution that we assisted with is that they needed niche skills with industry experience. We didn't have all of the talent we needed within HP's four walls. Obviously, if we have our own technical talent, we use that, but we didn't. So we actually helped the sales team by finding several different resource channels, agency contractors, statement of work labor, and really offered that up in a very fast time frame, getting them staffed up in 4 locations and really sourcing and onboarding the entire solution in a fairly good time frame to meet the customer requirement. The last case study on page 4 is on the business process outsourcing side, and this is in the healthcare industry. You may not be aware that HP is one of the largest Medicaid claims processing firms for the U.S. state government. And in this case, this is a BPO contact center with a multi-million total contract value over 5 years. And the solution here was to actually replace the Medicaid information systems with our own applications, as well as our own hardware and some third-party supply content, providing claims administration, even pharmacy processing services according to federal rules and regulation. We were also asked about hosting and disaster recovery as one of the elements of winning this solution. So in this instance, the role that procurement played was really about transition planning, making sure we could move the third-party supply, the unique suppliers into HP, contracting and risk mitigation, a big factor when doing business in the government, U.S. federal and state government, which also falls within, my procurement team's control. So now I'd like to ask the second polling question. So if we could have that polling question come up. It's, in 2012, is your company buying or selling more outsourcing services, less outsourcing services, or about the same amount? And so we'll let you answer that polling question now.
So you want to take a shot at and predict the outcome of this one, Jill?
It's either more or about the same. I think the economy is still putting some pressure on customers.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see what comes. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, well, I hate to just agree, but yeah, I would say based on my radar, I'm seeing folks hovering around, mostly around more, and some around the same. Very few, if any, doing less. But let's not lead the witness, right, as they say?
Let's not lead the witness. Ah, wow. We got it. 75% more. That's staggering. Only 6% less and 13% or 19% about the same.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So with that, I will just give you my closing thoughts on the next slide in summary, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So the real headline for you to take away is, what does this all mean? I'd say first and foremost, the global procurement organization here at HP is critical to the success of our services business. The regions play a key role, especially in contracting and subcontracting. We really bridge the client requirements with global procurement supplier capabilities. And we're also looking to engage with suppliers who can be high quality in terms of product and service on time at the right price. So that's critical to HP delivering to the end customer. Also, takeaways on the right-hand side, you've seen how we support a deal throughout its life cycle. We look at the client supply base and their contracts. We work to develop a seamless transition plan, and then we transform that supply base to HP's best-in-class strategies. This tight collaboration between global procurement and the sales team, along with end customers, that's how we bring the greatest value to the corporation. So with that, Frank, I'll hand it off to you for the question and answer session.
Great. Thank you again, Jill. Very informative, and this is a very interesting topic. My first question really has to do, I guess there's 2 parts of it. How would you describe the required mindset for success for those working in the, I'll say the enlightened procurement scenario that you're talking about? if one thinks traditionally, if you think of a traditional sales organization or a traditional procurement organization, you probably couldn't come up with two different areas of DNA in an organization. However, you're talking about really, a collaboration, a very close collaboration, which, really requires, I would say, at first, a different mindset. How would you describe the mindset? So let's say you're about to hire a new person for your team. What are you looking for beyond, traditional procurement background?
Great question, because I've done some of that since I've joined HP. I've been lucky enough to be able to build out the right kind of skills in my leadership team, but we also grow the skills, for those that don't have them yet. But the perfect mindset is definitely customer-focused leadership, someone that thinks customer first and can really move quickly, adaptable people who are creative, but also, understand the policies and processes that need to be followed and why, but can articulate those in a way that is a balance. So it's always a balance. And I think the three things that we hear, that I heard from a lot of my internal customers, what they want from us, they want us to understand their business deeply. We're much more credible as a procurement organization if we know what they do. Make it simple. That's the second thing they ask for. Make it easy to do business with global procurement. Move quickly, online tools. Make sure you're there when we need you at the right moment, and make it faster. So we're really focused on a lot of process improvement activity, making it very easy to engage. So I'd say it's really, listening to the customer and making sure you're focused on the areas that they've asked for, and then building and growing the skills throughout the whole organization if you don't have them already.
And Jill, I don't want to overhype this, but I have to think that this could be one of the greatest things to happen to the procurement organization in many, many years, meaning, being brought to the sales table, being brought to the revenue table. I mean, do you see that? I mean, that has to be a significant change from being on, let's say, on the overhead side of the house. Would you agree?
It is, and I got to tell you, I love my job. It's so much fun to be close to the sales and close to the customer, close to the heartbeat of what brings revenue in the door. And in fact, when we do employee engagement surveys, this is one of the roles that people enjoy playing in global procurement, because it is different, and it is more of a business savvy type of a person, someone who's very flexible and adaptable. Like I said, on any given day, I buy, I sell, I advise. So, it's not just being in a box.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so let's get tactical for a moment. What does a typical week or month look like that might be different if you were in a more traditional organization, meaning based on, let's say, phone calls with sales or meetings with customers, or, being part of the, a sales or customer session? Anything you can talk to that you're able to share?
Oh, absolutely. And this is for myself and a lot of my team members. So I'm actually part of the staff of a lot of the senior leaders in the sales team, in the business. I sit on their staff. I attend their staff meetings just like, all of the rest of the services side of the house, and a really integral part of what they do. My team members are also mapped to some of their executives and some of their managers, and my team members get to sit in on those staff meetings, and they're called upon to move fast and really understand the business. So we do spend a lot of time on that. There's also the nuts and bolts of working with the other parts of global procurement, the sourcing centers, which are shared services, and the category teams, which are really doing the heavy sourcing, contracting, and negotiating. So there's a lot of constituents, a lot of players that you get to work with and build relationships with in order to deliver this service and do it fast.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question that came in. The question is, what takeaways from your previous financial industry experience have you been able to bring into your current role with HP?
Oh, that's a great one. It's, boy, the cultures are so different. My early career was in telecom and then going to financial services, and now back into technology. I always called financial services a fast slow culture, and what I mean by that is some parts of financial services move at warp speed. I mean, the New York Stock Exchange has to process trades in milliseconds, and IT is a huge part of running a financial services company. Your IT has to be perfect. So that's the fast part of financial services, but some of the slower areas that I observed were consensus decision making. You know, sometimes it would take a while to get a lot of different business units on board with one program or one mission, and we'd have to do small pilots to get somebody really excited about an idea, and then it would catch fire and everyone would want it fast. So it was that, fast, go, process the trade, close the banking deal, and then sometimes you were waiting, but when you're done waiting, they really want it fast. And I think how I've applied that here is, obviously the financial services industry is one of the industries my team supports, and we do deals in that industry, and there was one deal which I showed you that was in that industry. So it's, trying to make sure my team understands how that industry is different, how people think and act and make decisions differently is critical, and being prepared for that, because it can feel like whiplash a little bit. When you're told the RFP timeline is this, and that's a stretch, and somehow my team has to go throughout global procurement and get everybody lined up and fired up to meet those aggressive deadlines.
Jill, is it as simple as a shift from an almost exclusive focus on saving money, a shift from that to an almost exclusive focus on making money? Is it that simple?
It's an and, not an or, so you have to find a way to do both, because procurement is still judged, rightly or wrongly. We still have to present that number to our corporations. Usually the CEO is going to ask, how much did you save, and how credible is the number you put forward? So the key is, how do you do that in a way that's also enhancing revenue? And because a lot of our customers want things for a lower price, that's why they come to HP. The third-party content needs to be at a lower price too. So it's really an enabler of the revenue, and it's an and, not an or.
Okay, I'm actually just taking a look at a handful of questions that just came in. This next one is talks about the Davids and Goliaths out there. So how can a small firm compete with companies like HP and IBM in terms of procurement deals? Big companies seem to get the deals out there in the marketplace. Any advice to the small and mid-market players?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, next week I'm going to be at an event at the New York Stock Exchange where HP is part of a supplier diversity event. We're very active in helping small minority-owned businesses in the marketplace. In fact, we're pretty progressive in my region with U.S. public sector in what we call a mentor-protege program, where we're actually helping small businesses to learn about doing business and spending money out of HP's pocket to do that. So we're very committed to small business. That's a good way to engage with us, and the U.S. public sector is one of the areas where we count on small business. We typically like to team, so there are things that HP is good at, the size and scale, but we need partners that are small, nimble, and fast, and with unique technology to offer. So, if there's anyone specifically who wants to find out more about our mentor-protege program and our commitment to small business, please just contact me at my email address, which is showing on the screen right now. I'd be happy to get you in discussions with the right people in global procurement.
Okay, that sounds promising. Next question is, let's see here. With the increase in outsourcing, this participant wonders if organizations that are shifting procurement roles to more contract management relates to automated tools. Any sense of the impact on automated tools and its impact on the deployment of talent within these organizations?
So I'm understanding that as the procurement process using automated tools. Is that your read, Frank?
Yeah, I'm struggling myself a bit with this question, but I guess one of the things I can glean from this is as more and more companies use tools, if you will, automated tools, does that free up your resources to maybe focus more on the customer-facing roles or more strategic roles and kind of get them out of the minutia?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, that's an important part of running an effective procurement organization is having excellent tools that allow the work to move quickly and with the least amount of human touch, right? We want to save our people time, and where we've been successful in making things leaner, we have chosen to invest people in these more strategic activities because we think there's more value in that. If something can be automated, let's automate it and then choose whether to redeploy those people to something more interesting and exciting and more career fulfilling. But yeah, having the right tools to perform the process is critical.
Okay, we're just about out of time. One last question, if I may ask, is for those on this call that are listening and are somewhat intrigued but have not really taken a step in this direction, what is your advice or counsel to them?
Advice and counsel. This is an incredibly valuable role to the corporation. It's a fun area to be in. You definitely have to make the business case at senior levels to put resources in this direction. But once you have a few wins like the ones I showed you, it really sells itself. Once you have the first senior business owner saying, I couldn't have done it without global procurement, I must have them, on every deal, then you're there and everyone else will be signed up for it. So I see it as a highly valuable role, and if anyone's interested in exploring or talking more about it, feel free to contact me.
Great. Jill, once again, thank you so much for sharing your story, taking the time, and keep us posted. We'll find an excuse to get you to speak with us again. Thank you very much. And to those of you in attendance, thank you for taking the time. Hopefully this was a productive session, and Arlene will make sure that she keeps you posted as to future webinar schedules and discussions such as these. Have a great day, everyone.